A few days ago, I posted something on my Instagram called What Stepmums Are Afraid to Say Out Loud. The response was pretty big, with lots of women telling me the things that they were too afraid to say out loud. They might be sitting on these secrets themselves, but they didn't surprise me. I hear versions of these thoughts all the time in coaching conversations, workshops, in DMs from women trying to make sense of what's happening inside them in stepfamily life. And what struck me wasn't really the thoughts themselves, it was all the shame around them. All these women saying, I thought I was the only one, I felt like a terrible person, I've never heard anybody else say these things out loud, I thought it was just me. They were the things that really stayed with me. Because nobody should be feeling that isolated in their thoughts. Hello everyone and welcome back to Stepmum Space with me, Katie South. Now this episode is going to be a little bit different. We did have a listener question lined up, but after all the comments on the post around what stepmums are afraid to say out loud, I thought it was worth us having a conversation about that because it's something I think a lot of you are carrying privately and feeling completely alone in it. So this Instagram post, if you haven't seen it, was called What Stepmums Are Afraid to Say Out Loud, and it included things like this. I wish I'd met a man without children. I love the half of my life when it's just me and him. I've sometimes resent how much I've given up. It sometimes feels like their mum is in my house. And there were thousands of women, and maybe you were one of them, reading those words thinking, oh my God, I thought it was just me. One woman commented, I've always felt so bad for these feelings, like a really bad person. I contemplated leaving because I shouldn't feel this way, but hearing other people admit it makes me feel human. And honestly, I think that says everything. We're human. And the deepest pain for a lot of stepmums isn't actually the feeling itself. It's what they think the feeling means about them. I'm not saying everybody feels these feelings. I'm not saying I feel these feelings. I'm just saying the feelings I hear a lot. And obviously, when you put something like that online, you get mixed reactions. There were women saying, every single one of these makes sense. This made me cry. I finally feel less alone. But there were also comments saying, well, then leave. Or why date a man with kids? Or you're horrible for thinking that. And I feel sorry for the children. It's pretty ironic, really, because those reactions are part of the reason why these thoughts stay so buried in the first place. Because stepmums learn very quickly there are certain feelings they're allowed to have and certain feelings they absolutely are not. But as you know, feelings don't disappear just because they're socially unacceptable. They just go underground and they intensify. So let's get into this a little bit more because I think one of the biggest misunderstandings around stepfamily life is this idea that difficult feelings automatically mean bad intentions. And they don't. Feeling resentment does not automatically mean you're cruel. Feeling overwhelmed does not automatically mean you don't care. Feeling relief when the house is quiet again does not automatically mean you hate the children. But so many women panic as though it does. And a lot of that panic, I think, comes from the gap between who you believe you should be and what you're actually experiencing emotionally. And what I mean by this is that many women, including probably you, entered stepfamily life thinking, I'm a loving person, I really like kids, I'm emotionally intelligent, I can handle complicated relationships, I want to put the kids' needs first, all really, really positive intentions. And then, boom, you find yourself having reactions you never expected. Jealousy, resentment, irritation, feeling displaced, feeling hyper-aware when the children are there, and maybe feeling more like yourself when it's just the two of you. Somebody actually wrote on this post, I realised how much more I love myself and the person I am when it's just the two of us. And that's a really, really important one, right? Because underneath that isn't, I hate the children. It's, I don't recognise myself in this dynamic. And that is completely different. But instead of thinking, this role is emotionally much harder and more psychologically complicated than I expected, many women think, what kind of person does this make me? And that's a really painful place to live internally, because now you're not just dealing with the feeling itself, you're also dealing with shame about the feeling. And shame changes things. Because once you feel ashamed of what you're experiencing, you stop speaking honestly. You minimize, suppress, overcompensate. You try and be endlessly understanding, relentlessly accommodating, and ridiculously good. You tell yourself not to react, not to need anything for yourself, not to make things difficult. And sometimes, after holding all of that quietly for a very long time, you explode. One woman commented, no one recognised what I was carrying until I snapped. And I think a lot of you will recognise that feeling, because silence really distorts things psychologically. The less honestly you can speak out about what's happening internally, the more frightening and abnormal your own thoughts start to feel. And I know there are very few places where stepmums can speak honestly without immediately being corrected, without someone rushing in to explain why the children have it hard too, or why the stepmum should leave, or why she knew he had kids, so she must have known what she was getting into. And look, stepfamilies are difficult for everybody. The parents, the exes, and the children all have complicated emotional experiences in stepfamilies. And of course, we care deeply about the experience that the stepchildren have. But acknowledging that doesn't erase the emotional complexity for the stepmum in the situation. These things exist together. They're not competing. What I see in my practice is that many women spend years trying to force themselves into a version of this role that feels emotionally impossible for them. And it's not because there's anything wrong with them, it's because there's such a lack of honest conversation around what this can actually feel like from the inside. The truth is this: being deeply affected by a family system you didn't create, whilst having limited control over large parts of it, is psychologically difficult. Especially when you love your partner, especially when you're trying hard, and especially when you want things to work. And this is the bit I really want you to hold on to. A complicated thought is not your identity. A difficult feeling is not a character judgment. And an emotional reaction does not automatically tell you who you are as a person. What matters is what you do with those feelings, okay? It's whether you reflect on them, whether you understand them, whether you take responsibility for them and find somewhere to speak honestly about them, or whether they stay buried and they just start running your system silently underneath. And what I see in my work every day is that so much changes the moment women stop asking, how do I stop feeling like this? And start asking, what is this feeling telling me? Because underneath most of these taboo thoughts is usually something much deeper. Exhaustion, loss of self, feeling psychologically unsafe, feeling over-responsible, feeling like none of your needs are being met and there's nowhere for your experience to go. That is a huge part of why I created Stepmum Space, so that there's a space where you can say what is true for you without fear of judgment. I know the podcast helps you feel seen, and I know more of you want connection with other women who are going through the same things as you. So the easiest way you can get this right now, a way to connect deeply with women who really get it, whilst also gaining something for yourself, is to join the Stepmum Reset, my signature 2-part workshop for stepmums. It's a space for you to slow down and look honestly at what's happening inside you without shame, without judgment. You'll be with me and other women who truly understand what you're going through. Because something happens to a lot of stepmums, and it's not all at once, it's gradually. You get so focused on managing everything around you, the ex, the kids, the dynamics, the guilt, the resentment, the emotional pressure of trying to hold it all together, that you slowly lose track of yourself inside it all. And I think for many women, these taboo thoughts are often a sign that something internally has been building for a long time. The reset is really a space to stop and look honestly at what's actually happening underneath all of it. Not just how can I cope better, but what's happening to me in this role? What have I lost sight of? What do I actually need? Because you can't navigate something as complex as stepmotherhood when you've lost sight of yourself. You can find information on the upcoming reset workshops at stepmumspace.com/stepmumreset. And if you've been listening to this episode thinking, yes, I am not the only one having these thoughts, then I really hope this conversation helped you feel a little less alone in it. I'll be back next week with another listener question. Till then, take care. And if you're listening to this and recognizing yourself in it, feeling like stepfamily life has slowly taken up more space than you ever expected, where you've been adjusting, managing, holding everything together, and you're not quite sure where you are in it anymore, that's exactly why I created the Stepmum Reset. It's a small 2-session workshop across 2 Wednesday evenings, the 3rd and 10th of June, UK time. We'll step out of the noise and look clearly at what's actually going on, what matters to you, what you need, and what's yours to carry, and of course, what isn't. Spaces are limited. If you want to join, you can find all the details at stepmumspace.com.